going to start today with Tennessee Lieutenant Governor and Senate President Ramsey. Ramsey is the first Republican Senate Speaker in Tennessee in 140 years. He is a small business owner. He founded Ramsey and Associates as a surveying company in 1980, and it has since expanded to a real estate and auction company as well. During the '08 elections, when Republicans suffered losses in elections nationwide, Ramsey oversaw a gain of 3 Senate seats in Tennessee, and then he gained a supermajority in 2012. So he is serving an unprecedented 4th term as Senate Speaker, and in 2009, the Republican Lieutenant Governors Association named him their national chairman. So if you will help me welcome him to the podium.
Thank you. You mentioned the fact I'm in the real estate and auction business, but I comment on auction Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's one advantage that I have. I think we only have about 6. You told me 10 minutes, now it's 7 to 10. You notice that, okay? So I can talk 90 miles an hour, but hang on, here we go. We're not going to have very long, so I don't want to say. But anyway, I'll talk a little slower than that. But first of all, I want to say, hope you all will be able to come to Nashville in September. GoPack will be in Nashville. We're taking requests right now, which country music singer you want to hear, okay, which NASCAR driver you'd like to see. So we'll make sure we get the right ones there, the ones you'd like to see there. It was mentioned about the fact of what we've done in Tennessee, and I want to take just a second to walk you through that history. I know a lot of other states have done what we've done, especially southern states. But I think we started that trek a little earlier than some people did, as I became elected Senate Speaker. Now keep in mind, Tennessee does this differently from anybody else in the state. We're the only state in the nation, I didn't know this, I became on NCSL's on their executive board. We're the only state in the nation that has a Senate Speaker. Our Constitution, we have readopted, we came back in after the Civil War, sets up a Senate Speaker and a House Speaker. Then, simply by statute in 1951, because the Senate Speaker is first in line to the governor, should the governor die or resign or be removed from office, the Senate Speaker becomes governor. We don't have a statewide elected lieutenant governor. I'm also lieutenant governor. So I'm a state senator elected in a district in northeast Tennessee. The Senate elects me to be their speaker / president. And then, because of that, I'm also lieutenant governor. So I'm I think the only one in the nation that operates exactly like that. So when I first got elected as a leader, the Republican leader in minority, this was in 2006, the Republicans had a 18 to 15, we were a minority by 18 to 15. We have since turned that around, and now the Republican State Senate, I love saying this, our Senate now has a 26 to 7 Republican majority. And I'm going to tell you what, we have a shot at picking up 2 more seats next time in 2014. I'm not quite finished yet. Okay, we're going to relegate the Democrats to 3 in Memphis and 2 in Nashville, and that's it. And we're going to get to that. And the House has kind of followed our lead and used our same model and went across the state telling saying that it doesn't matter who governs. That's what I say all the time. It matters who governs. And we now have a 70 to 28 state House of Representatives. And when Governor Haslam was sworn in 2009, in January 2009, literally for the first time in the history of our state, since 1796, we're the 16th state, since 1796, we have a Republican governor and a Republican Senate and a Republican House, literally for the first time in the history of the state. Now, thank you, GoPack, for that. But I also understand that when people elect you, they want you to do things. And they want you to act like Republicans. They want you to govern conservatively, and I think we've done just that. So we walk through, I can go on and on this, what we've been able to do in the last 3 or 4 years, but I want to hit the highlights, so we do leave some time for questions. On the budget, on fiscal issues, and where we were. Of course, the governor in 2009, as most states at that time, inherited a deficit. We overestimated the revenues we were going to bring in, so we've now balanced 2 budgets in a row. And by the way, I'll be in Nashville hopefully by about 1 o'clock here in a few minutes, flying out right after this. We're in session this week. This should be our last week. We're getting ready to pass another budget. But we passed 2 in a row, and this will be the 3rd budget that's actually smaller than the budget we passed the year before. Now, I'm not talking about it smaller in growth. I'm talking about smaller in actual dollars. And while we're doing that, we're one of only 3 states that have not cut K through 12 spending. We've kept our education spending on a level that keeps increasing. We've cut taxes. We've eliminated the gift tax. Tennessee had a gift tax that is now gone. We've cut the sales tax on food. And by the way, we don't have an income tax in the state of Tennessee. So we have to cut our sales tax on food by a percentage point, now down to 5%, from originally 7 actually. And we've eliminated the death tax in the state of Tennessee. So we are eliminating taxes and balancing budget at the same time, all that without an income tax. And so a fact that I'm proud of, a lot of different groups, foundations actually rate when is Tax Freedom Day. I think we just noticed that on a federal level, Tax Freedom Day is coming up relatively soon. But in Tennessee was the first state to reach Tax Freedom Day on March the 31st, what was our day in Tennessee. And I think California, Illinois, somewhere around Thanksgiving. I think the last time I looked. So not only we were able to do it on a physical level, but on just take all these other issues. And what I'm most proud of probably is our education reform, and we've seen for decades, and not the history of the state, the teachers union had a stranglehold on policy in the state of Tennessee. Well, we have broken that stranglehold and thought outside the box. We've set up a teacher evaluation system that ranks teachers on 1 through 5 across the state. Again, very controversial. I think in probably the fall of 2009, I or any other legislator was not real welcome in K through 12 schools. But after we implemented this and got this started and be able to rank these teachers, and the good teachers in particular actually like this. We've made tenure something that's not automatically given to you in our state. Before July of last year, 98.7% of the teachers that were eligible for tenure after 3 years got tenure. 98.7%. Not exactly what I'd say, but something you earned. It was practically given to you, but now it's something you have to earn to get tenure through these evaluation processes that we've set up. And something that, along the line of what was going on in Wisconsin at the same time, keep in mind we're not a union state so much in Tennessee, but we actually did away with collective bargaining for teachers in our state too. We were one of the few southern states that had adopted back in the 50s or 30s and 40s maybe, that allowed teachers in the state of Tennessee to have collective bargaining, and we have eliminated that. Had some of the many protests, nothing like what Scott Walker went through, I'll be perfectly honest about that, but they did shut down government for a day or two. We took care of that and got those out. No, that's getting results. If you look at what's going on across the state, we have lots of different tests that we've had set up. We've actually had probably evaluations set up longer than any state in the nation. We started in the early 1990s with test scores, so we have a great measurement system. Test scores are up, graduation rates are up, we have more people reading at grade level, more people doing math at grade level because of these education reforms. On tort reform, I think we passed one of the most comprehensive tort reforms / medical malpractice reforms in the nation. And we modeled it after what Texas had done, but gone a step further that actually puts caps on punitive damages. Don't ask me to explain it from one end to the other. I'm not an attorney, I'm a real estate auctioneer, but I took the attorney's advice on this, especially the conservative attorneys, that we do have one of the most comprehensive tort reforms in the nation. And we've seen that, we've seen industry moving into the state of Tennessee. We did an unemployment compensation reform. That was something really big to me. I took what I call a red tape tour across the state, listened to small business owners, listened to the large business owners, for that matter, chambers of commerce, etc. And on my red tape tour, the one thing that most employers were more frustrated with than anything, I believe, was the unemployment system in the state of Tennessee. And the fact that people weren't using it for a bridge any longer from one job to another job, were actually making a lifestyle. And I think you all seen this in your same state. We had no requirement that to actually be looking for a job. I think that's pretty important. If you're drawing unemployment, you ought to be looking for a job, not just waiting for your next unemployment check to get there. We heard lots of employers would try to call people back to work, and they would say, well, wait till my unemployment check runs out, and then I'll come back. And so we have reformed unemployment compensation in the state of Tennessee. And what we're working on right now, we literally just passed the House last week, passed the Senate a couple of weeks ago. The governor hadn't even signed into law yet, is a comprehensive workers' compensation reform. That I think if we were in recruiting industry in the state of Tennessee, we are a low tax state, we're a low regulation state, but one thing that we may have been out of line on was workers' compensation. And the fact that we're one of the few states that immediately upon filing a workers' compensation claim, it went to court. And I actually had an auction last Friday, sold a piece of real estate in Bristol. The guy that lives right across the street is an attorney who makes his living on workers' compensation claims, walked across the street to talk to me, and he wasn't real happy. That would be an understatement to say he wasn't real happy that we're basically doing away with his practice. He'll have to change his business model because we're going to start taking workers' compensation claims to administrative law judges. It really was sad in Tennessee that if you have a 30-year employee that worked for you forever, a great guy, if you sit down and work this out, you could work it out. But day one, When he got hurt, he hired an attorney, the business hired an attorney, they could no longer talk, even if they're best friends, or even related to them. I've heard some stories on that. So we are doing away with that. But we're working right now on higher education. I think we've done a lot of reforms in K through 12. In higher education in particular, we have been using a funding model probably since the history of the state. I don't remember it any differently. I've been in legislation for 22 years. Is based simply on enrollment. And we had some community colleges, even some higher ed 4-year colleges that were becoming experts at enrollment, but not necessarily experts at graduating people. And so we've now redone our funding formula on higher ed that we're adopting right now to make sure that we are actually graduating people, not just enrolling people. And all that I think is paying off. I know we talked about earlier when Fred Barnes was talking about what's going on across the nation. I do think that in the states, people are paying attention. I think that will be the savior of the Republican Party. We stick to our conservative principles, that we will continue to grow and prosper. But we do polling. I do polling through my PAC. The governor does polling in his PAC. And you look at Congress has approval ratings of 0.2% or whatever it is, literally in the low teens. And the governor's polling about 70% in the state of Tennessee. The legislature polling in the 60% in the state of Tennessee. And if you ask people in those polls who is governing in the state of Tennessee, they realize it's Republicans. And so I do think that we're going to gain a few more seats in the Senate, a few more seats in the House. The governor will be easily reelected for lots of reasons, including money. But he's doing a fantastic job. So I do think that we can do this. I was especially proud to land on this that George Mason University, as a lot of places do, just did it was recently out about a week or so ago of the freest states in the nation. And they actually ranked on taxes, ranked on regulations, Second Amendment rights, on and on and on, the litany they ranked people on. And I was proud of the fact that Tennessee was the 3rd freest state in the nation. And when I'm making my Lincoln Day, Reagan Day speeches across the state, number 1 and 2, by the way, is North Dakota and South Dakota. So I like to say Tennessee is number 1, really, okay, where people will want to live to and move to. I can't wait. Next Wednesday night, May the 1st, 2 weeks, I guess, we'll have dinner with Rick Perry in Texas. He and I became friends in the presidential race, and I've known him for a long time, actually. And I can't wait to go down and have dinner with him to tell him that Tennessee is freer than Texas. I can't wait to do that on May the 1st. So, I'll start right there. I have to sneak out as soon as this is over to catch a plane, but we're more than happy to take questions.
Got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions? Is there somebody?
Did I do that good job of explaining? Or did I scare them to death? Which one was it? I don't know. I talk too fast.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ron, I missed the beginning part of your presentation, but
You missed it, man. It was great.
I'm sure that's why it's here for posterity. You may have addressed this, but I mean, your job creation and actually attracting companies is something of greater competition among states. And I know you do a fair amount trying to attract jobs to Tennessee. Of all the things that you talked about, tax rates, regulation, workers' comp, skilled workforce, whatever, what's the number 1 thing when you talk to a company that they're most concerned about when you talk to them about coming to Tennessee?
Let me tell you the honest to goodness truth. I think it is just the lifestyle and the atmosphere we have in the state of Tennessee. But I remember it wasn't too long ago that the governor actually sat down with a CEO was moving his company into the state of Tennessee. We asked him, we said, well, what did you really want? Why did you move to the Nashville area? Why did you move to the Nashville area? Was there low taxes? Was there low regulation? Was it the fact that we already formed workers' comp? What was it? He said, no, let me tell you the honest goodness reason. I said, why is that? He said, my wife loved it here. And so I do think that it is just an overall lifestyle. Nashville in particular, and it is where the growth is. I live in Northeast Tennessee. I actually live closer to 4 state capitals than I do to Nashville. And we're growing, but not like the Nashville area in particular. But I do think it is the lifestyle, the just overall quality of life is one thing. We're 1 day's drive from 70% of the population. I know all these figures, of course, in the state, in the nation, and on and on. But I do think it's a combination of everything. But I think quality of life plays into it as much. But that's the reason I say, 1, 2, or number 3. But George Mason University, I thought, but Tennessee's climate and quality of life gives more to go to South Dakota at any time.